The public discourse is saturated with the missile threat. The strategic importance of assets like Greenland for missile defense is a calculated distraction. An adversary understands the kinetic cost of a missile-on-missile exchange is prohibitive. The primary vector is not a launch detection, it is silence. The systemic liability of the United States is not its hardware, but its central nervous system. Analysts at CSAs confirm the two critical failure points are undersea fiber optic cables and low Earth orbit satellite constellations. These are the assets that enable global power projection. Severing these data links does not require a kinetic strike. It requires precise, deniable action, a cut cable, a blinded satellite. The objective is not destruction, but isolation. To create a digital fog of war from which there is no recovery. This protocol creates the Blind Leviathan, a U.S. carrier strike group, such as the one dispatched to the Middle East, suddenly isolated, unable to see, unable to communicate, stripped of its digital armor. It becomes a high-value liability, waiting for a low-cost asymmetric event. A state does not go bankrupt like a company. It experiences a solvency crisis. Its capacity to fund its core liabilities, pensions, subsidies, and most critically its war machine, disintegrates. This is not a battlefield outcome, it is a fiscal event. The protracted conflict in Ukraine, sustained by consistent US and EU wartime assistance packages detailed by SEPA, was engineered to trigger exactly this. Analysts at CSIS have identified the core vulnerability. The war has become a profound domestic liability for Russia. The immense drain on the state budget to sustain conventional attritional warfare creates a mathematical countdown. Every dollar allocated to artillery is a dollar removed from the domestic economy, accelerating internal political instability. The war's unpopularity is a direct function of its rising kinetic cost. When a conventional victory is fiscally impossible and political collapse is the alternative, an adversary's weakness forces a pivot. Strategic logic is reduced to a simple equation. Find the cheapest possible weapon that can threaten the most expensive possible target. This is the genesis of asymmetric warfare as a solvency protocol. The objective ceases to be winning on the battlefield. It becomes inflicting a systemic shock on the sponsor. The U.S. military's own successful tests of kinetic drone swarms confirm the blueprint's viability. For a cornered state, the incentive is to trade thousands of these low-cost assets for a single, multi-billion-dollar U.S. liability, such as an aircraft carrier deployed to the Middle East. It is a launch-on-warning posture, driven not by aggression, but by bankruptcy. The core of the issue is not strategy, it is accounting. Analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, quantify this new battlefield solvency crisis with a simple ratio. A $5 million main battle tank, the symbol of conventional power, can now be kinetically neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is a 10,000 to 1 cost exchange deficit. For every dollar of offensive capability an adversary deploys, the U.S. must spend $10,000 on defense or accept asset liquidation. This is not a sustainable economic model for a global power. This economic inversion has a name: the democratization of violence. The capability to destroy high-value assets is no longer monopolized by nation-states with massive industrial bases. It has been decentralized, made available to any group with access to commercial technology. Asymmetric leverage is now achieved not through spies or special forces, but through consumer electronics. This represents a fundamental break in the global security architecture. The barrier to entry for projecting lethal force has collapsed. The Pentagon is not blind to this vector. As documented by Defense Scoop, The U.S. military is now conducting its own kinetic drone swarm exercises on American soil. They are attempting to adapt. But the math is unforgiving. The kinetic cost to defend a high-value liability, such as a U.S. aircraft carrier deployed to the Middle East against a coordinated swarm, is exponentially higher than the cost to launch one. This creates a mathematical incentive for a cornered adversary to force a zero-sum choice: absorb a humiliating, system-collapsing loss, or trigger a systemic escalation protocol. The operational theaters in Ukraine and the Middle East are a strategic misdirection. While legacy media focuses on the depletion of conventional assets per SEPA analysis, the primary threat vector is not incubating in these visible conflicts. The real staging grounds are the designated gray zones, regions of calculated instability designed to function as proxy laboratories. Analysts at RUSI identify these zones as environments where the kinetic cost of new weapon systems can be tested without clear attribution. The U.S. military confirms it has conducted its own kinetic drone swarm exercises on domestic soil. An adversary requires a parallel environment. These gray zones provide the necessary cover to refine the exact swarm tactics that can achieve mission success against a high-value American liability. Therefore, reports citing warnings from governments in regions like South Africa or even Canada are not the cause of systemic risk. They are symptoms. They are the heat signature of a solvency crisis in Western security architecture. These zones exist as a mathematical function of proxy war attrition. As the U.S. commits expensive conventional forces, it creates a market for adversaries to develop low-cost, asymmetric counters in unregulated spaces. This protocol is not an error. It is a feature of the current geopolitical framework. By fixating on overt conflicts, the system has incentivized the outsourcing of asymmetric R&D to ungoverned territories. The result is a network of launch pads for a low-cost, high-leverage attack, turning the entire global south into a potential staging area against the ultimate American liability: its power projection. The nuclear command and control architecture is built on a protocol known as launch on warning. This is not a choice. It is a pre-programmed response. The system's solvency requires the ability to launch a retaliatory strike before incoming warheads can destroy U.S. assets. This entire protocol hinges on data from early warning radar installations. According to official statements, locations like Greenland are deemed critical for missile defense, precisely because they house these sensors. Now, introduce a systemic vulnerability. An adversary does not need to fire a missile to trigger this protocol. A sophisticated cyber attack can blind the radar network, creating a complete data vacuum. This is the fog of digital war. The command center receives one of two signals: either nothing or corrupted, unreliable data. The eye of the system is now blind. The commander is now faced with a zero-sum calculation, forced by the system itself. Is the blackout a simple technical failure? Or is it a hostile act designed to mask an incoming first strike, perhaps by the very low-cost, kinetic drone swarms the U.S. military itself is now exercising? The launch-on-warning doctrine removes the luxury of time. Hesitation invites decapitation. Therefore, the mathematical incentive is to assume the worst. The commander is forced to launch out of fear, based on an absence of data. This is the protocol. The systemic trap is not the enemy's strength. It is the fragility of our own network. The mathematical certainty of the current conflict architecture is not theoretical. The depletion of high-cost conventional munitions, documented by SEPA, against the demonstrated operational capability of low-cost kinetic swarms, per Defense Scoop, creates an unavoidable strategic incentive. An adversary does not need to engage a U.S. carrier group directly. a kinetic cost that invites a total response. The protocol is to target the systemic liability that supports the asset. This is not a matter of winning a battle, but of auditing the opponent's solvency. The objective is to force a launch-on warning decision under imperfect information. CSIS reports confirm the extreme vulnerability of subsea data infrastructure. An adversary can trigger a systemic crisis with full deniability by attacking the network, not the warship. This is the blueprint for a calibration shot, an event engineered to appear as an accident, designed to test the escalation protocol. Within the next 12 months, expect a multi-day data and communications blackout originating from the Greenland sector, impacting critical missile defense nodes cited as vital to U.S. security. The event will be publicly attributed to a subsea seismic event or a cascading technical failure. It will be an attribution impossible solvency test of the entire U.S. strategic deterrent. The signal will have been sent,